So, hello, everybody. I'm really thrilled to have a guest here today that I've been talking about a bit on Instagram the last few weeks. And she is another friend, a former, I guess we could say, girlfriend of Marilyn Manson. I don't know if that's the term that you would use or not, but to me, that's what it sounds like your relationship was for a while. So, she's going to talk about that. And also, she was around Manson in his early years in Florida. And so she has also a lot to say about what his band was like back then, what he was like, and what it was like being a fan of his and in a relationship with him in those early years. So I just wanted to introduce her. This is LeSeur. Am I saying your last name right?
Yeah, LeSeur. LeSeur, you close.
Was okay. All right. And Lisa, so just so that our audience knows, you did not contact me. You were keeping a pretty low profile on Instagram. And I think that what happened was you posted a photo of you and Manson, and I'll put it up for our audience here from back in the day when you dated, and said something about sweet about Manson, or said that you believed him or you didn't believe the allegations. And so some people told me about that, and I contacted you because, as you probably know, I'm trying to get as many people on the record as possible to tell the truth about what Manson is really like and what it was like to be in a relationship with him.
Yeah, what had happened actually was a Manson group had gotten a hold of one of my photos and they had posted it. And it was funny because my Instagram blew up immediately. And then that's when you saw it. And then that's when you contacted me.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm glad you clarified that. So yeah,
Yeah.
again, like, this is not a situation of someone who's, jumping on the bandwagon or just can't wait to get publicity.
Exactly.
Well, so I guess let's just start here in the present, just briefly. So tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel like telling us, and then I guess tell us, when you met Manson, and sort of, I'm going to let you kind of tell the story of how that developed, and then I'll jump in and ask some questions. But I would love to just kind of hear, like, how did you know Manson, and how did that relationship develop?
Well, I'll tell you, at the time I was 19 years old. I was working at Kmart over in the Tampa side, the west coast of Florida. So I was working with a girl at Kmart, and she kept telling me about this local band, wanted me to come and see them. And I told her I didn't really like local bands, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think it was a Creative Loafing local fanzine that I saw a picture of Manson in it. And when I saw it, I said, okay, definitely I'll go, because I saw him and he was beautiful. So I said, okay, I'll go. And she was dating the drummer at the time. So I went to that show in Tampa and I met him beforehand at the show. And we immediately were like magnets to each other. I was sitting in the hallway and he came out, and I walked right up to him. He walked right up to me. And we met that night, and it was just instantaneous. And he called me the very next day at home and then at work. So that's sort of how that all started.
And how old were you then? Were you 19, 18?
19 and soon to be
20. Okay. And I'm just curious. So yeah, so your friend was dating the drummer in Manson's band, and this was Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids. Is that
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yes.
As my audience knows, I actually don't know much about Marilyn Manson's band or his musical history. So this is interesting though. So he had been at this. Was this before he became famous, right?
Yeah. So they started in South Florida. He lived actually where I live now in Boca Raton, Florida. And all of the Spooky Kids were from down here. And they would come to Tampa to play shows, and then also to Orlando, Miami. So they were all in South Florida, and then would come to the West Coast as well.
Wow. Okay. And so, so how do you know how long he played in Florida before then he moved to LA?
Well, the last time I saw him was in 1993, and it was shortly, I think 6 months after the last time I saw him, that he moved out to LA. So those pictures that I taken in 1993 1993. And then that's sort of like the end of when I saw him before he took off to California.
Okay. Okay. I see. And so really like you knew him when he was on the cusp of fame,
Yeah.
basically, but hadn't.
Yes. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something that I've always regretted. Called me one day when he was recording their first album in South Beach with Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. He called me and wanted me to come and stay with him in the hotel with him and Trent Reznor while they recorded that album. And I was not able to.
Oh no. Why? Did you have to work or something?
It was that and a family matter, but yeah, do it. And I, to this day, regret that I was not able to do that.
I could totally agree with that. But wow, so you knew, I mean, you knew him like really right as it was starting to happen for him.
Right as he was about to blow up. Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious when you knew during that period when you were dating him right before he blew up, moved away and blew up. Did he have a good idea that he was going to become big? Like, could he see that on the horizon, or at that point was he still struggling a lot, and it was doubtful whether the band would be successful or not?
No, I would never say that he ever seemed full of himself. I would never say that he was down on himself. He just was sure of himself and what he was doing, and loved what he did, and had a good head on his shoulders. And I think, he's very intelligent and he's very smart. And I think he probably knew he was going. But I think, the fact that Trent Reznor helped him in the beginning, that's what really put him on the map. So it was that chance encounter with Trent Reznor that really did it for him in the beginning.
And where did they meet? Tell me. Trent
I'm not sure where they met originally, but Trent Reznor signed him to his record label for that first album. And Trent Reznor came to Florida, to South Beach in Miami to record the first album with them.
Okay. Wow. And I know that's stuff that the fans probably already know, but I think that's something that's very interesting that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So you went, kind of going back in the story, your friend told you that about this guy, this band, you and Manson had a kind of an instant chemistry or connection or whatever you want to call it. You started a relationship. And so what was the nature of the relationship? I mean, obviously a sexual relationship, but I mean, like, how often would you see him? Would you hang out a lot? Kind of what was that?
I would see him always when he came to Tampa. I would travel also to Orlando, and he would always give me a heads up, and then I would head out to wherever he was. So as often as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because where was he based? He was not based in your town. Was that right?
He was based in Boca Raton.
Okay. And so, and then, how long did you have this dating relationship? Was it several months, or what was the time frame on that?
2 years in the end.
Oh, 2 years. Okay. So I guess, I'm going to ask you some of the questions, kind of get them out of the way, because I actually think that it's interesting for for a lot of people, including the fans, but for a lot of people to hear more about like just what it was like in those early days with the music and with Manson and everything. But I do want to ask, the pertinent questions. I know that you've probably read about the allegations, heard the allegations that people like Evan Rachel Wood and some of these other women are making. I won't ask you to comment on their allegations, but do any of these allegations resonate with what you personally experienced with Manson?
No. To me, all of it was very shocking. That is not the Manson that I knew. He was a very romantic, very funny, a very intelligent, but a very down-to-earth guy that I never saw any type of him ever getting mad or angry or violent in any way. So to me, it was all very shocking.
And so just for the record, I mean, and I hate to put it this bluntly, but I mean, he never raped you or assaulted you or hit you or demeaned you or anything?
No, I mean, as a matter of fact, like if I even thought something like that would even have happened. I would never even have entertained the thought of going to South Beach to stay in a hotel with him and Trent Reznor. I mean, if he made me feel uncomfortable, like I would never even want to put myself in that situation, but he never.
Now you said that he was not violent, didn't even really have a temper. Now, that's interesting, because one of the things that a lot of the accusers and even the media are claiming is that he's got this kind of Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of persona, where when he's had too much to drink, or when he's got a woman in a relationship with him, then he turns on this monster, and that he's, extremely abusive and demeaning, and that he's really into very sort of aggressive sex and all of that. And you're saying that none of that rings true with you?
No, I never saw any side of him like that at all. Even if he was drinking, I was never around him doing hard drugs or anything like that. But drinking, I never saw any fluctuation of his personality like that.
So you were around him when he had been drinking, or when he was intoxicated on occasion?
And I'd be backstage after shows. I would see him around the band. Yeah, for sure.
And you never saw a mean or sadistic or aggressive personality?
No, he was a very even-keeled person.
Now, in terms of how he treated you, would you say that he was a gentle person? How would you describe him?
I would say he was a gentleman, for sure. He was very romantic. He was not aggressive in any manner in the way of holding me or touching me or sexually or anything like that. Not anything that I would be fearful of or be, just uncomfortable about.
Did you ever hear anything like secondhand, maybe from other people who hung out with him, or other people in the band, or your friend who was dating? You said your friend was dating the keyboardist. Did I understand that right? The drummer. Did you ever hear anything from any of them that indicating that Manson could be abusive toward women, or that with certain women he could be abusive?
Never.
Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised, because that's what I've been hearing from other people in other interviews that I've done. And, for my audience, take a look at the interview with Paula Weiss, ex-girlfriend. Take a look at the interview with his former personal assistant, Paula. And so it's not surprising to me, but it's really amazing how it seems like the media has really gotten this wrong. What do you, if you had to kind of speculate, like, what do you think is, you said you were shocked to hear about this. What do you think is going on? Like, why has this happened? Or why is the story taken on?
I don't know if it's a chain reaction. I don't know if these women are working together. What I think it is they're out for either attention or money or publicity, like a name for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that's how I feel. And I think the only thing that I think I could tell you that Manson is guilty of is being fond of women and possibly dating more than one woman at a time. And I think with some of these women, I think maybe they got hurt if he didn't choose them. And I think perhaps with some of these women, this is a form of retaliation.
I mean, that's, and people can attack me in the comments for not being an objective journalist. I've gotten that attack before. And first of all, I'm not a journalist. Okay. Secondly, I'm just someone who makes YouTube videos and interviews people and talks about stuff I care about. But no, objectively, I've looked at the evidence. I've looked at the lawsuits. So do you, without going into any individual allegations, do you think that based on what you saw, it's possible that maybe he had this side of his personality and you just didn't see it? Or do you feel like you were around him enough intimately in situations where he had his guard down, where you would have seen this dark side.
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely was around him enough. And I think I mentioned this to you before, and I'll say this about anybody. I think people can change, but they usually don't. And I think if he had any inkling of that type of personality in him over that 2-year time period, I've seen some inkling of it. And I absolutely never saw anything like that in him.
Yeah, and that's what Paula said, and Paula as well, Paula and Paula. But and the thing, and you make a really great point that yes, it's possible for people to change, but it is really almost unbelievable that someone could earlier in his life, in his dating life, be extremely kind and gentle and gentlemanly and completely non-abusive, and then 10 20 years later, whatever, well, I guess it was like 10 years later or whatever, then suddenly be this monster. And people like to say, well, someone, just because someone abuses one person doesn't mean that he abuses someone else. Well, first of all, I don't know who made up that rule. I don't know if that's necessarily always true. I think that if you were in a 2-year relationship with him, even one where you were not seeing him every day, but a sustained, intimate 2-year relationship, I do think you would have seen if this man had a pathological personality and pathological behavior and feelings toward women. I do think you would have seen it. And you're saying you never saw anything like that.
No, and I never saw it around other band members, other bands, other people, all the hordes of people that I ever saw him with backstage or at any of the shows or anything like that.
Mm. Yeah, what do you make of like someone, and I know this is just speculating, but someone like Wes Borland, who basically jumped on the bandwagon after this and said Manson was a horrible person and he's getting what's coming to him and everything. What is that? Just an attention seeker?
That's all I can make it out to be, because like, why now would they come out and say that? Why wouldn't they have come out before and say that? Yeah, it just, in my mind, it just doesn't add up.
But I wanted to talk more about your relationship in general and hear about what that was like and what Manson was like. Other than being a gentleman, and you said being very intelligent, what were some of his personality attributes? Like, what was it like to be in a dating relationship with him?
He was just very thoughtful. He would joke around a lot, but he was always sweet. He was into a lot of the same things I was, that I grew up on Kiss and Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper. He wanted to buy my sister's Kiss dolls from her. It was like a little boy almost. Just a lot of fun to be around, and nothing ever too serious. Nothing, like I said, never saw a nasty side to him and never saw a mean side to him. He was just always super sweet, super amazing. I have nothing but pleasant memories of him.
Now, what was it like in those days, like going to the shows and stuff? Were they extremely popular at the shows they would play at? Like, did they have, did they have a really big following in Florida?
Yeah, they definitely had a following. And he used to always carry lunch boxes. He used to collect lunch boxes. I used to go shopping for him to find rare lunch boxes for him. And all the girls would come to the shows with their lunch boxes. But it was cool because me and my sister used to go to the shows, and we'd be able to pull our chairs right up to the front of the stage. And then we would always be backstage afterwards. And then I would ask him for t-shirts and stuff. And he would say to me, well, why do you want that when you have me? So, I mean, that's the kind of person that he was.
That's so sweet. That's really sweet. And just imagining him collecting those lunch boxes.
Yeah, very cool boy, I'm telling you.
Was their music, his band, was it comparable to what it became? I should listen to early Manson, but I haven't. Did it get more like dark or electronic over time, or what was it?
Yeah, it got darker, more electronic. Yeah, it did. I mean, it got more and more awesome. but it was still at that time, yeah, it was good. You have to track some down, or maybe I can send some to you and you can listen to it. Or even the first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the first album was more along the lines of what they were like originally.
And see, he said they had a pretty good following in Florida. And were they, I mean, were they pretty popular, or were they kind of struggling still?
I wouldn't say they were struggling. They had a pretty good following. I mean, it definitely, I could see in the time that I spent with him, it getting bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. Did he talk, when he was with you, did he talk much about the business end of it? Like in terms of like his career trajectory, or how the band was doing, or what their goals were, or that sort of thing? Did that ever come up?
No, not a lot of that. He didn't talk a lot of like that with me.
Yeah. What else did you talk about? That you feel comfortable sharing, obviously. But what were some of the things, like the topics of conversation that would come up with him? Or were there certain things that he liked to think about or talk about, or what he was into?
Other music, other artists, horror movies, art.
Oh, so he was a horror fan even back then, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So
do you remember any of his favorite movies?
I don't remember offhand any of his favorites, but just all of that stuff we love talking about or watching, and we just had a lot of that kind of stuff in common.
Mm-hmm. And then his, did you ever meet his family? Did his parents live around there?
He lived with his parents at the time, and I met them once. Yes.
Oh, okay. So he lived with them. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember what they were like? You met the mom and the dad?
Yeah, they were a pretty close-knit family, and they were very nice and polite, and his dad was funny, and yeah, they were cool.
Okay, so tell me about the band dynamic that you observed, because you sometimes you would hang out with with the larger band, right? And you would see Manson with the other guys in the band.
Yes.
Is that right? And did they, bands are always famous for, especially when they're on the road or touring, having, personality clashes and stuff like that. Did they have volatile moments, or do they get along pretty well? Or what was your kind of sense of like their...
For the most part, they got along pretty well. There was one band member who sadly passed away, Brad, Gidget Guine, who he unfortunately did a lot of drugs. He was a heroin addict. And so he was a constant problem with the band because he was drugged. It would be causing problems with the shows, or him showing up to school and that kind of stuff. So that was the only thing really that I saw that was a problem.
I see. And what kind of a relationship, back then, did you see between Manson and Twiggy? Was he called Twiggy back then, or did he go by Jordy? Or
Twiggy, and now I think he goes more by Jordy or Twiggy, but they were very close. And
okay, so back when you were hanging out with the band and when you were hanging out with Manson, do you remember are there any incidents that stand out in particular, just in general, of like funny things or interesting things that happen? Or were there any times when you were hanging out with the band, or you were at a show and it was a really incredible or interesting moment? Do you have any memories in particular that you like to think back to?
Nothing that stands out. It was just always awesome spending time with him. I mean, we like whatever hotel he'd be staying at, we'd sit by the pool and hold hands and talk about the people around us and talk about what were they thinking about us. But
what do you mean? What were they thinking? I'm curious. What do you mean?
To say he would say, I wonder what they're thinking about us, because we would always be dressed in black and be sitting out by the, you know what I mean? And like, what were the people thinking about us, and were we vampires? And
that's funny. What kinds of things did he like to? You said he liked horror films, and he liked other musicians,
art, books. I gave him a bunch of Anne Rice books that he read.
Oh yes. Oh
Yeah,
yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love Anne Rice's books.
I gave him a lot of those books, and he would read them.
Anne Rice's books are very erotic too. I would take that. I would take an Anne Rice book any day over that 50 Shades of Grey shit, is all I'll say.
I gave him Beauty series. I gave him.
What's that? I'm sorry.
The Sleeping Beauty series. That's what I gave him.
Oh, you went out there for a second. The Sleepy what?
The Sleeping Beauty series.
Oh, Sleeping Beauty. Okay, okay. And what's the premise of that? Remind me, because I'm more familiar with the Interview with the Vampire series.
Yeah, that was, and I'll tell you, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But it was a very romantic, very erotic trio of books.
Okay, okay. They were called Sleeping Beauty. Now I want to check this out. Maybe I'll do a video sometime where I just talk about these Anne Rice, erotic Anne Rice books. Well, tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, about how the relationship ended. I guess you stayed on good terms because you don't seem bitter or anything like that.
Absolutely. The last time I saw him, he asked me how, because you have to remember, back in 93, we didn't have cell phones. People didn't use the internet.
Beautiful days. Beautiful days. Go on.
Right. We didn't have that stuff. I'm even lucky to have those pictures of him and I from that time.
Right.
So how it ended was, he asked me, how did I want to stay in touch? Do you just phone calls, writing letters, etc.? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And that's when, like I said, it was like 6 months after that he moved to California, and we just lost touch. So it was nothing bad, no ill feelings, nothing like that.
You know, that's a nice way to end relationships. I have to say that one of the sweetest endings that I ever had to a relationship was this guy that I saw for just a period of months. And he was from Ireland. Where was it? Galway. But anyway, he was in the U.S. He was in Texas for working on a project for God, I can't even remember the company. But anyway, and so he was just going to be there for like 6 months, and we met early on, and we saw each other, hung out sometimes almost every day for 6 months, and then he had to leave, and it was one of those things like we both. And we kind of both sort of felt like we honestly loved each other, but it was also like there was just no way it was going to work because we were both about to start these completely different lives. And it just, and so I remember thinking that, as sad as it was, like that was a great, like, you're not, to break up just for that reason, not because you're tired of each other or you're fighting or.
Yeah, exactly.
But so that sounds nice. And I'm curious, when's the last time you talked to him? Did you probably lost touch after a while? Right?
My sister went to a show in Tampa back in 2006, and she was backstage, and he asked for me. He was like off to the side, like nobody could get near him. And my sister saw him, and the security guards tried to stop her. And he said, no, it's okay. I dated her sister. And she got CD signed for me, but he asked for me at that show.
See, that's, to me, that should be so touching and affirming for you. That
it was super sad that I didn't go.
Well, but you know what, the fact that he recognized your sister too, like it wasn't, that shows that you had a real relationship there, where he's not just remembering your face, like, oh, that's the girl I used to date, but like, no, and was being a gentleman, was being deferential, was saying, no, hey, I know that person.
Yep.
That's a great story. Have you kept in touch with anybody else from that period who also knew Manson?
I'll tell you, it's funny because in my work relations, I'm a makeup artist. There's been one ex-band member who I worked for. He worked for Too Faced Cosmetics. I'm no longer friends with him, but he was a bassist for Marilyn Manson in the early days. I think he played one live show. So I was friends with him till probably my mid 40s. another member, Zimzum, was married to my high up district manager when I was a national artist with NARS and in Chicago. So it's really funny how my job in cosmetics has interlinked members of Manson, of original Manson members.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting.
Another girl that I worked with a couple of years ago is married to Fred, who was Laura Lucas in the band. And so that's another person of my working in cosmetics that I interacted with that was married to one of the original members of Manson.
What is it about this cosmetics? Well, you know, Manson does wear, you know, or did wear a lot of stage makeup. So I saw him on an interview with Larry King several years ago. And Larry King said, "What's up with all the makeup?" And Manson said, "Well, I still wear less makeup than most chicks I know."
Right.
Did he wear makeup back then? Did he? When
No,
you knew him?
he didn't. But you know what he did wear? And he always smelled amazing was vanilla oil. He always smelled like vanilla.
Really?
He always smelled delicious.
That's great. I like that detail. Yeah. Vanilla. I'm imagining him like, you know, beautiful and smelling of vanilla, and then carrying a lunchbox around.
Back hair, and but like stage presence, he would wear the top hats and the coats and the striped, you know, tights and the boots and the whole spooky kids look that they had.
I'm curious, did he court controversy even back then? When you would go to these concerts, were there controversial elements of the concerts?
Oh, sure. I can remember actually one of the first times when I met him, and there was a lady who was like associated with a church of some sort, and she was trying to save him. She wanted to get in the van and like take him away and save him.
Wait, yeah, so he had attracted among these different fans, but he had attracted this woman who was basically a kind of a religious zealot and was trying to convert him?
Yes.
You think she had the hots for him? You think she was hoping that, like, if she, you know, saved him?
No, I think she.
That's funny. What do you remember anything in particular that was the most kind of outlandish or shocking or controversial from his act? Do you remember seeing him do anything at any point, or was there something they like to do to really get people riled up?
Well, he would do a lunchbox dance. So what he would open up a lunchbox on the stage and light it on fire. He would open it up and light it on fire and pull his pants down and do a little dance around the lunchbox.
Wait, with his naked ass, like doing a dance,
hanging out. Yeah,
that's funny. Was it like a little jig? What is the lunchbox dance? What?
Like a little jig around the lunchbox. Yeah, it's called the lunchbox.
That's funny. That's funny. Oh wow. All right. Well, you know, I appreciate you sitting down for us briefly for my show, even briefly like this, because it really, you know, it not only does it add some extra insight to the situation, but it's another credible voice, someone who has dated Manson and been intimate with him and been in a more extended relationship with him. It's another voice basically testifying to the same thing that people have been saying on my channel, which is that he's a gentleman. He is not an aggressive or violent or controlling romantic partner. And these allegations against him just do not ring true. That's basically what you've said here today.
And I'm happy to do it. If I can help him in any way, then I am more than happy to do it.
Well, I appreciate you very much for this. And I hope people will check you out on Instagram, in case you have anything else to say or follow up with, as long as they're kind, no trolls. You're going to block the trolls. This is the thing too, that you and I can say as women that maybe men can't say, or they would be afraid to say, or they're not going to be taken seriously when they say, which is that we understand as women that other women are capable of lying and being manipulative and of being aggressive and abusive. That is absolutely.
And something else I don't know if you can use this, but I will say
Go
is
ahead.
that I have been in abusive relationships with both men and women.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, but the reason for my saying this is that I have experienced that, and I know what those people are like, and I in no way experienced anything like that with.
I mean, that's a very compelling thing to say. And honestly, it reminds me of something that someone else that I've interviewed has said. I don't know if you've seen my interview with Greta Aurora, but she was a woman, she's a YouTuber, and she was a woman who had a very brief, just weekend fling with Manson. In fact, she's open about the fact that she lost her virginity to him. But one of the things that she says is that, yes, even though I just spent a weekend with him, I have been in abusive relationships before, and I know what a pathological personality is like. And she said, when I've been in abusive relationships before, where even the first couple of days I was hanging out with this person, I didn't know if they were abusive, but I could tell there was something kind of off, or it's a feeling that you get, or it's stuff, it's things that you learn to identify, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And she said, I didn't see that with him. What I saw with Manson, she said, despite the fact that she was sexually inexperienced and that she was a virgin, that he still was not, she said he was not assertive, that he was very passive and shy and so forth. And so this is not what we would expect of some sexually hyper aggressive, rough, abusive rock star who's just trying to have sex with every, manipulate every groupie he can into bed, whatever. It's just not. And I think, and it's good too that you were honest in your critiques of him, and saying that, one thing he was guilty of was not always being faithful. And that's something that I think he's admitted before, like in prior relationships, that, that there were times when he was not faithful to his partner, or was dating multiple women or whatever. So we're not trying to say that Marilyn Manson is, is the perfect guy, or, just the perfect husband material or whatever. Right. What we're trying to say, though, is that based on your experience with him and the experience that others have had, these charges just don't make sense.
No, they don't. They make absolutely no sense at all.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for speaking with me. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who are going to be very glad that you added your voice to this discussion. And I hope that the media, that someone in the mainstream media will take notice of this interview, and also some of the interviews I've done with others who knew Manson, because there's definitely a whole other side of the story out there, and it's one that does need to be told. And so I appreciate you for being here and being willing to tell it, Lisa.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, everyone, I will see you, next time. I've got hopefully more good interviews on the way in the upcoming months. And I'm always open for any tips that you have. I'm not talking about money actually right now. I'm talking about if you have any information, or if there's anyone out there who knew Manson who wants to speak to me, then contact me, please. But also, I will take your cash tips as well if you want to PayPal me or support my work on Patreon. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.